Do you hear it? Beautiful. Listen closely to the anthem of your demise.
Through the dark veil of space and time. This is Warp Chatter.
All right, welcome back to the Eye of Terror Studios. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. I'm your host, Scuff D. This is the Warp Chatter podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to talking about the Horus Heresy Legion's digital card game, Horus Heresy Lore, Warhammer 40,000. I'm your host, Scuff D, and this is a podcast by players for players. With me today, I've got Axel Manning.
But yeah, howdy ho, folks. It's me, the Crab co-host himself.
Okay, and joining us again is Howlydoin.
Hey, how's it going?
Howly was on, I think, episode 3 or 4, if I remember correctly.
I think it was 4.
Was it 4? Yeah, we were doing the, talking about the patch where they updated the Marks of Chaos. And at the time, we were planning on doing a podcast talking about the Dark Angels up until like the day before when they dropped the patch on us. And so we tabled that discussion for today. That is going to be the subject of the hour, so to speak, is the Dark Angels. Lore discussion on, how they're working in the game, warlords, different, favorite cards, least favorite cards, kind of go around in just a variety of topics as it all relates to the Dark Angels. Not the Defenders of Caliban. That's a different faction. We're going to table that for a different discussion some other time. But we're talking mainly about the Dark Angels today. But before we do that, first and foremost, Howly, if you want to catch folks up, give us a little bit of background, history, rundown, introductions on who you are.
Oh, okay. I'm Howlydoin. Been playing Horus Heresy Legions for a little over a year now. I started right before the pandemic, basically. Kind of just kept playing while working from home, Played Magic for about 15 years, leading up to basically playing this game. Played just about every other card game under the sun. I was the herald of death for most of them, as a lot of the card games I used to play no longer exist. Besides that, just a big fan of Dark Angels, Warhammer card games. It all kind of worked out well. As I mentioned before, I was dismayed because I joined the game and Dark Angels weren't in it yet.
And now they are, and here we are, gearing up to talk about them. It kind of coincides because feels like it's been a long time, but it was just last Wednesday when they revised Lionel Johnson's ability and his reckoning. And I know I've tried it a little bit. I've kind of had a couple different tasks to do with the Dark Angels. This isn't necessarily homework that we had, but we knew we were talking about Dark Angels, so we wanted to touch up on them. And I wanted to try the Lion with his new ability and his reckoning. And I also wanted to try Corswain, because the last time I had really played Corswain, I didn't have half of the Dark Angels collection. So I was really kind of playing him just with what I had available on release. And since then I've got the whole spread of Dark Angels cards now. So I kind of want to toe those waters. And then, then of course we had the raid event and Scoria and all the other fun stuff thrown in there too. So I've been a little distracted, but I've gotten some work done. We were going to have a fourth player with us tonight. Unfortunately, some real life stuff came up, so he wasn't able to make it the last minute, and I wasn't able to schedule a fourth player to join us. But if you are listening out there, wherever you are listening, if you are interested and would like to attend or be a guest on one of the episodes for the Warp Chatter podcast, hit me up. Leave a comment. Go ahead, leave a comment wherever you're listening anyways, just so I know what platform folks are using, if you can. But hit me up on Discord or on Reddit. Let me know that you're interested, and I'd like to have folks on. As I say every time, this is a podcast by players for players. Next week, I've got a couple new people scheduled to talk with whatever the topic is that we're going to be talking about next week. It may be Emperor's Children, it may be a balance update, it may be spoilers, for whatever the next expansion is going to be. And I think after that, Kazrim is going to be guesting on, content creator Kazrim, for those of you who are familiar with his YouTube videos. So, I mean, just like to give a venue for people to get a little bit more familiar with some of the personalities and the people that they might see and play in the game. So that's always an option. That invite is out there and open. And I want to thank you, Howley, for making it here tonight. I know you are super stoked. You are a Dark Angels fan, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was like, I don't know. I like I mentioned last time, my first exposure to Warhammer was the Dawn of War games, and I was all about the green, their colors and stuff, and of course the name like called out to me because it was cool. And then I saw their like 30K artwork, and I was like, oh man, the green was kind of a downgrade. I'm a big fan of this old style.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very excited to see them on some card art. Not disappointed, for the most part.
Yeah, the pre-heresy colors with the black, I was never, for me, when I first entered 40K or just the Warhammer, I mean, it was a tabletop game first. I liked the lore, but for me, it was always how the models looked and painting the models and building them. And black has always been a tricky color to make work. Like Black Templars is my main army, and for me it works because they've got the white shoulder pads, and I give them, they've got the tabards, and I give them the brown belt pouches, and you color up the bolters. The Dark Angels in 40K have got that, that Caliban green and the red bolters, but in 40K they're just black. And it wasn't until, I don't know when it was exactly, but when they kind of added the extra nuances there with like the red heraldry, and the checkered, and actually kind of gave them that knightly element. And I like that a lot better. I think it makes them more unique than just here's some black armor Space Marines.
Yeah, here's the Dark Angels. Guess what color they are?
Right. These guys are really dark.
Yeah. My favorite 40K punchline. Here's the Dark Angels. What color are they? Green.
It's dark green.
Yeah, Blood Angels are red. It makes sense. It lines up.
It's dark green. It's not like if they were like light green, that would be a whole different thing. Like, why are they so cheery? I thought they were dark. It's a secret. You can't know that they're dark.
They evolved into the Dank Angels.
Yeah. Well, the whole like the monk robes, that's something that you see more with the Defenders of Caliban. Not that we're going to be talking about them, but I mean, it's so interesting how that is, attributed to the 40K Dark Angels. And in the 30K, that's not what you see on their Astartes at all. You see that more with those who have stayed behind on Caliban than you actually see it with the Dark Angels.
Yeah, I think the robes were like to signify that they were like one of the units that hunted the fallen, if I remember right.
Right, they were in the inner circle, yeah. And then within the inner circle, there was other circles as depending on where you were at. But that was kind of like they were initiated, and they knew the actual secrets, because prior to that, as just a neophyte, as a training, they learn all about their history, but they don't learn anything about their secret history until they've reached a certain level of veteran status, and then they become initiated and get this secret revealed on them, like, hey, by the way, we've got some sins to atone for, and there is a half of our faction is out there from 10,000 years ago. They betrayed us, and no one must know.
Our assumptions are confirmed! He has a suspicious brother! As he goes to the floor, he can repent!
That's my favorite part about their betrayer, how exponentially it grew. Alright, we sent 500 back. Alright, how many are they now? 50,000. Alright, we kicked them off the planet again. How many are they now? 100,000. It just keeps doubling every time they check back up on the Fallen.
Yeah, I think they've got to have, some number, because I don't ever remember there being an actual number of how many Fallen there were when I was playing. I mean, you knew what they were. They were scattered in the warp. Caliban was destroyed, and they're out there somewhere, but you never had a number. But I think as time has gone on, I believe there's like somewhere there's a lore listed where like they've got a book with names on it, and they're it's like Arrow, it's like, you have failed the city, you have failed Caliban,
You've failed the
It's like
Imperial.
fantasy in the Dwarf's Book of Grudges.
Right. They
Yeah.
know. They will find you, and right at the top of that is those key names out there. It was interesting. Like I didn't mind that part of their lore. I think it gave them some history, obviously. But beyond that, I think in 40K they just seem so like they I don't know. I think the way I see them in 40K is they're the first Legion. They're very stubborn, or I don't think stubborn is the right word, because stubborn is usually something that the people attribute to the Imperial Fist. I think arrogant might be a better word for it. Arrogant and secretive. But in 30K, it's a different kind of attitude. Almost like there is that arrogance there, but they're really stalwart more than anything, which I find interesting.
I think, I think, the common theme among 40K legions is that they, embody the most memorable parts of their Primarch, whether those parts are good or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like their most defining traits. So, obviously they're very proud of like who they are, and they're very, headstrong, because that's what the Lion was, at least most memorably, even if that wasn't, the best traits to copy. And it's the same thing with like the Space Wolves, the Imperial Fists, they all embody as much of their Primarch as they can, but it's only the bits that stuck out the most that they really follow the closest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do in 30K at least with, despite being the first Legion, the Lion wasn't the first Primarch found. So he, had to. It's like they're proud of who they are, but they haven't like proven themselves yet. That's always like this desire to really show that they are worth the title of the first Legion.
Yeah, I think there's that, because they're not found first. Lionel Johnson's not made War Master. These were for at least for the initial Dark Angels who fought alongside the Emperor on Terra during the Crusade, or prior to being reunited with their Primarch. There's this weird, like Astelin is a prime example of that like he harks all the way back to the initial thing, and beyond that, then you've got guys like Red Loss who are just, at this point, they're driven to prove something to themselves or to everyone. Like, we should be out here doing these things. We should be doing it better. We're not getting the recognition, but we don't. But at the same time, it's not like they're doing it for the recognition. Like, I don't.
Right,
It's
like filling the shoes.
Yeah, they're so driven by, at this point, just like the need to do it. That is, which is their whole purpose. I don't ever see them being overachieving to be recognized, unless it's Astelin, who, again, it's Defenders of Caliban. He's linked to Dark Angels. He is a Dark Angel by all accounts, but you don't see that with those other characters. They're really like they're just duty bound, and I don't know if that's because I was thinking about this prior to doing the episode. In terms of the books and the lore, there wasn't a whole lot of Dark Angels 30K stuff, right? We got
only a couple of books.
Right. We got one book, which was the entire book was before the Emperor even arrived on Caliban. It was literally like it might have well has just been the origin story of Luther and the Knights of Caliban, really, more than anything. Then you got the second book, which is really, then you get two sides of the coin. You get Luther on Caliban and Zahariel, and kind of dealing with their new role. And you've got Lion out there fighting chaos and like becoming acclimated to the actual like heresy that's taking place. There's like 10 books between those two stories. Then there's another 10 books between the next Dark Angels novel, which at that point sees the Dark Angels linked up as part of the new unremembered empire with Guilliman and Sanguinius. And at that point, there's those two sides where now it's how much time has passed and we're catching up on the two ends. What is Lionel Johnson willing to do to capture Kurz and keep his honor intact, and what is Luther willing to do to preserve his way of life on Caliban. But that's the trilogy, but there's so much story in between all of those things that you only get like a couple short stories in the entire Horus Heresy series. Like you get a little, I think 1 or 2 stories where the Dark Angels are fighting with the Night Lords. And you get 1 or 2 short stories about what's going on with Caliban. And I think one of them is actually not even a Defenders of Caliban story. It involves the Knights Errant. And spoiler alert, Loken and Iacton Cruz go to Caliban to try to feel out Luther and see if he's going to be an ally or not. So that's not even really a Defenders of Caliban story. It just kind of gives you some plot point with where they're at. So there's this giant void. So there's not too many characters to really get a good vibe for other than Johnson and maybe Holguin and Redloss. Corswain is mentioned, but I have not yet read a story or a book where Corswain is kind of one of the key protagonists.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a couple of legions like this where due to Horus's strategy of, scattering a lot of the power of the Astartes in order to, have his spear tip plan at the Emperor work, you have like a lot of books in the main section where it's like, the Emperor's Children, the Iron Warriors, the Death Guard, and so on, versus, the Fists. and whoever else manages to get back to Terra quickly, the Space Wolves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, part of his strategy was sending the Dark Angels out into the middle of nowhere, and same with the Blood Angels. Of these and like a similar thing with the White Scars. It's kind of it took me a while to read a White Scars book, and it just they kind of got scattered about, and it. I don't know. I guess their backstory sort of fell victim to Horus's plan. Maybe that was part of it. If I scatter you enough, they won't write enough books about you.
Well, yeah,
chaos wins.
That's kind of the weird thing, because it ties in perfectly with the theme or the plot. Like, just because they were sent to the outskirts, or because Horus dealt with them away from what's actually taking place, there is no reason for them to be in the story. And, like you said, yeah, there's just those, like, Imperial Fists are the same. Probably in terms of the books that I've read up to this point, I would probably argue that the Imperial Fists had the least book time. And then the Dark Angels and the Blood Angels are probably second and third in there. White Scars, that's a close one. That's because they had 2 books. So they had Scars and they had Path to Heaven. So they might edge out, but their story is their story is Scars, here's what happened, and then Path to Heaven is like, yeah, now that's all said and done, here's how our story ends. And meanwhile, you've got other legions, like, the shattered legions take a brunt of it, and then a lot of it is traitor legions, like what are they up to? What small ragtag force is trying to thwart them? You've got Space Wolves in there. It's kind of interesting. I don't know, like
it's the press inches, right? Because it's it's falling to chaos as one of the Emperor's sons is a more compelling story than like being a good boy and staying home and defending Terra.
Absolutely, yeah. I think
and a lot of it is like, everybody wants to know why. They want to know what Fulgrim's thinking. They want to know if Angron's thinking. Like all of these questions and more.
Yeah.
And that's really what they focus the narrative on. Of course, like I was just gonna say, like, everything involving Magnus and Russ, because that's such a it's such a good tragedy, right? But if they just write a whole bunch of stories about how the Imperial Fist prepared defenses and everything defended great and everything was great, we wouldn't be here talking about it.
Right. No, you could do that in one short story and it's fine. Like you said, I agree. There are those things that you want to know about. You want to know why did the traitors fall? Like, what was the motives for each one? Certain key moments that you want to know about. Prospero is huge. What was Gilliman up to? Because that was up until then, like, there really wasn't a whole lot of information. It was like, what was Gilliman up to? Like, the Ultramar sector was dealing with the word bearers. That was it. That's all you ever got out of it. And they think they flushed that out a lot more so. I think the stories with Lorgar and the interesting, back and forth of all the different cliques within the word bearers was a lot more intriguing than I would have thought it would be. But it's also at that point, it really is kind of the backbone. How did this legion fall? And because they fell, they were able to do, to orchestrate this plan amongst all these other legions too.
I love representation for my word bearer boys.
You've always got to mention the word bearers. They're worth mentioning.
We exist. Architects of the heresy.
Right. Well, that's true.
It was funny that you mentioned that. I was just thinking, I was like, man, I think the Ultramarines have to have the largest disparity between promotional material and actual lore. Like, the Ultramarines are on everything.
Yeah. There was a time, I think, a lot of Dark Angel. I can't say there's a lot of Dark Angel books, but Dark Angels, at least in 40K, the visual with the green armor and the red bolter, that was going around for a bit. I know they had a lot of box art for several models, like the new Mark Rhino, and they had some short story anthologies they were a book of. Everybody knows who the Dark Angels is, but they certainly aren't the poster boys by any means.
And that was the thing. I guess mentioning Primarchs and like what draws people to them. I always thought that was an interesting thing about the Lion, that I felt like Games Workshop played pretty well of, saying, was he being mysterious? Like, was he really seeing the bigger picture, or was he, getting distracted by smaller victories? Mm-hmm. And, because he kept everything so close to the chest, you really get to the end of it, like, we'll never know. Like, even to the point where he, ends up fighting Luther and, ends up sleeping for still to be determined. We don't know if that was part of his plan or not.
Right.
It's not quite Alpha Legion levels of, being obtuse in order to say that they're mysterious, but it's close. It's definitely the highest among the loyalist legions. Yeah,
he keeps a lot of things close to the chest, even well after he's been berated for it. He just can't seem to shake that. And I think that was the one thing, like, it wasn't even one of the 3 Dark Angels books. Like, Angels of Caliban was, in terms of plot, and that was the 3rd book in the Dark Angels books that exist in the Horus Heresy series, but in terms of plot, that was the book that had probably the most character development for Lionel Johnson. Didn't do a whole lot for him, but it had the most for him. But I actually think that the book that followed that, the Ruin Storm, did a better job of pushing of him beyond that, like beyond the scope of, okay, you know who Johnson is, you've seen his character, now let's show you a different level of him. Let's show you this guy who's still trying to fight for his honor, but he is also a master strategist. He is also stalwart. He is also loyal, which for quite a while is still up for question. But I mean, I think that book did a really good job showcasing that.
Yeah, and it's always I don't know, it's always been part of what drew me to the Dark Angels, was like caring about these seemingly like minor stories, like the stuff with the Night Lords, and whether or not he would have been better served just making a beeline back to Terra as fast as he could when he first heard about the heresy, or if going for these smaller operations was it glory seeking? Was it just trying to beat Horus? Was it part of a grander plan?
Mm-hmm.
And it always, and since he's not forthcoming about anything, you just kind of get to fill in the blanks mentally and make him cooler than he probably was.
Yeah, I think to some degree they've left that open to the imagination on purpose at this point, and I think it's just safer for them as a for Black Library or for Games Workshop. I think part of it is they've really wrote themselves into a corner long before they got to the Horus Heresy. Like, at some point, they were just like, look, we've got so much expectation on the possibilities and the secrets. We can't possibly give this justice in telling the story, because it's just going to be disappointing. So let's not tell it. Let's leave it open to interpretation or imagination, and we'll just let it go. Like, there's just some secrets that we can't tell, because if we told you, you would actually just be like, wow, that's it. Like, not even like beyond disappointment. Like, I expected so much more, like some good secrets and stories have been shared in the Horus Heresy. Some things have turned ideas on top of their head, which I think those are my most favorite reveals. I just don't think we could get that with the Dark Angels. I don't think there's anything that they could massively shake up and tell you that you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't even see that coming. Like it just, yeah, it would either not make sense at all, or it would just be completely boring.
Yeah, and like what are they going to do? Have half the Legion betray them?
Right. You'll never see it coming.
Right. Yeah, we've heard about this a few years now. But it that was also one of the things that I really liked regarding Dark Angels and their story was that they had such a large divide because of how charismatic Luther was and how dejected all the people on Caliban felt, and because a lot of the other stories that I've read, whenever there's like a loyalist contingent in the traitor legion or vice versa, it's usually associated with whether or not they were born on Terra. Mm-hmm. Maybe they didn't do that on purpose, or maybe they did, but it always seems like that's like the common thread, right? Of like Nathaniel Garrow was born on Terra, so of course he's not going to betray the Emperor. And I liked that, despite the fact that they had a loyalist and Everguild calls it unaligned, but I don't know, they seemed pretty aligned, the defenders.
Right.
And when the traitor contingent is that significant, and it has nothing to do with when or where you were born, it really had more to do with like how you were treated by the Lion.
Yeah, because it's hard not to argue that divide was not at all like Erebus didn't show up and whisper sweet nothings. Like it was Lion pretty much driving his certain people in a direction that he didn't even realize that he was rubbing them the wrong way, and it was all him. I mean, that ultimately that's his fault. Whether that is because he turned a blind eye and he didn't go back to Caliban, whether it was because he exiled people and he didn't think that they would get up to no good. Whatever the case was, like that doesn't rest on Horus or Erebus or any part of that grand design. That literally rests on his decisions and his personality more than anything creating that rift.
Yeah, and I think that's like a cool flaw of him as a character, because in the end you still don't know if it was like a calculated risk. Like, is it more efficient to just put all the trouble in one spot and have to go deal with it later, as opposed to like not knowing that you can trust wholly everybody around you? Mm-hmm. But either way, it either paid off or it didn't, right? Because he's still asleep somewhere, so we don't know what all was and wasn't part of the plan.
Right, and when he wakes up, I'm sure they're not going to tell us. He's not going to wake up and like, "Hey, Gilliman, I expected I would wake up and you would be up and ready. So this is all what I figured out." I don't think we're going to get that.
Yeah, I've been playing 5D chess with multiverse time travel. Don't worry.
Right. Well, talking about the Dark Angels as they are in the game. So they've got, I want to kind of hem on the two things that they've got going for them. Primarily, they've got quests, right? That's unique to the Dark Angels. And that is something that not all their troops have, but a good, decent amount of their troops have got it. And then they also have the wings, which I know there's 6, but we're only seeing 3. We're seeing Ravenwing, Deathwing, and Dreadwing. What are your guys' thoughts on those two elements? Whether, just in general in terms of how they work, how they execute, how they are in the game. Were they something that you were expecting or hoping for with the Dark Angels?
For the wing system, I was really looking forward to a wing system. It's one of their biggest gimmicks, and especially tabletop alone. It's just how customizable they are as a Legion simply off of that alone. So having it actually implemented and not totally awful was a shock for me. No offense to EG, but, they fucked up in the past when it comes to the defining traits of Legions.
I think I like how the wings work for the most part. I appreciate the units they got put into a lot of the wings, mostly, and obviously it's a valve that they can turn to buff or debuff a unit in the future, right? Because they can just give it access to more buffs, or in some cases, make search cards worse by expanding the pool that they can search through.
Right. And we did see that with that first big wave of the Dark Angels bus, where I think there was like 3 or 4 troops were added, and they got that wing troop, because I think Astravel wasn't a Dreadwing initially.
Correct.
Praetor Ramiel wasn't a Deathwing initially. So just adding that little layer there, they've used that, and that is a tool. They could. I don't think we're going to have a troop that goes from Ravenwing to Deathwing, but they could just take that Ravenwing away, and suddenly you can't tutor it as easily.
Right. And I think my biggest beef with it is honestly the Dreadwing, just because they like most of their pool is, or like I guess it's half. I guess it's half of the Dreadwing. No, it's almost half, is these, big expensive vehicles at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But all the Dark Angels cards synergize with Astartes, so you would never run these. And that's to me a little unfortunate. That Dreadwing's whole thing was having these big vehicles, and it doesn't really feel like within the card game they have a way to make that pay off.
Yeah, I think the biggest combo that you can do is having a Dreadwing troop out, and then you play the Ravenwing speeder that is going to thwap down 5 damage instead of 2 or 3.
Right.
I think
build your own.
The Onyx Saber.
Yeah. I don't remember. Build your own Ancient Marcellus. That was it. Almost.
Kind of, sort of.
And also, too, the Ravenwing department was lacking, so everyone would just build Deathwing, because Deathwing was where it was at.
Yeah, I mean, frontline combined with power and toughness is always going to be a solid combination.
Especially when you give a couple of them first strike. Well, one of them.
Yeah, the Deathwing with first strike, and if he can, he hits the table with 6 attack or more, which is not hard to do at all with the faction. That is a powerhouse card. And, you're like, oh, well, you just use a hard removal, but it's very likely at that point in time that your opponent has played at least 1 or 2 other units that you've been forced to consider using hard removal options on. That's always a frustrating thing, when you see that and it's been buffed several times, and you've already dealt with whether it is Romuel or an Astravel or even just a buffed Boreal, like a 5/5 Boreal. You're like, man, I gotta deal with that thing. You get rid of it, and then they throw down that nasty front line with first strike. I think the Deathwing, okay, so if we're just talking wings, if you had to just by themselves, because I think there are some that work wonderfully together, obviously, but just by themselves, how would you rank them in order of strongest to weakest, or most desirable to play versus least desirable?
For me, it's got to go Deathwing, Ravenwing, Dreadwing. I want to love the Dreadwing, but as he's pointed, at another point, Howley's pointed out, Dreadwing's got too many vehicles to synergize with a faction dedicated to having a lot of Astartes. And I love my Dreads. I really love my Dreads. Their 2 Dreads aren't amazing.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just have to say that's basically the general consensus, is that, besides Astravel and Dekur, which are fantastic units, but they're, fantastic in any deck. It basically goes Deathwing, Ravenwing, Dreadwing in terms of desirability, outside of those first couple of turns, where Dekur is the strongest opening play. I was looking through it. Yeah, I was just checking to see, because it looks like actually Ravenwing has the same number of vehicles, but they just have a lot more utility. They're not just expected to be out there and be a big dude.
Yeah, one of them is a flanker, and one of them deals damage, and they are cheaper. Yeah,
and the other one removes stealth. How handy is that?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to the one that destroys a random enemy troop if you complete its quest, and the other one which deals 4 damage to their board. But honestly, he's always seemed like a kind of a win more card,
right?
Because if you're already hitting them for 10, hitting their board for 4 doesn't add a whole lot of oomph. It's, nobody could say it's weak, but it's definitely awkwardly placed.
On the one hand, though, I do like that it's a 10/10 Leviathan Dreadnought as opposed to a Land Raider, because typically in that 10 cost spot, it's always a Land Raider of some variant, but this is just a Dreadnought. I like that part about it.
I love Dreadnoughts, easily my favorite type of vehicle from dating back to the real-time strategy games. I loved fielding a Dreadnought at any point. So anytime, like, I really tried with Coriolanus and Oramos as well, but it's just kind of the curse of being a high cost common. There's only so much they can give you outside of a high stat line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, shield is nice, but melt a bomb or hard removal is going to get rid of that, and you've spent all your energy on that one card. You're better off playing either Hexamagrammaton or the Invincible Reason. I think maybe you could make that work, but it's so hard to do. Like, it's so top heavy, and the game is not very favorable to that right now.
The thing I was going to point out to that, and the reason that Coriolanus does not work ever, is because Invincible Reason lowers the cost of up to 3 Astartes.
Astartes, yeah. Yeah, and
and
Hexagrammaton, it's got to be destroyed. So you have got to got into the 10 energy, played him, lost him, and then get to play a second, play another 10 energy card. It's for that.
Provided no other Death or Dreadwing units have died this game,
right?
Because you don't get to pick.
You get an Operator Decor instead. You're like, oh man.
Right.
Yeah.
You got ripped off. And yeah, once we get into the faction as a whole, I guess I'll kind of break down into that. But as far as the wings go, I think as Meatloaf once said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. It's been, and Deathwing is definitely a solid hit. I can't see any of those units receiving a buff ever, because I think they're all pretty well placed, except maybe Knights Cenobium. But I don't know how you buff Knights Cenobium without them being just way too powerful. It's the 9/9 for 9 energy with the quest, give +1/+1 to all your troops in every zone. How can you make that guy better? But right now he's not really playable because the deck's already so top heavy.
Yeah, like in events, great. He's a nice closer or puts that last pressure on. I liked it nice when, Johnson's old ability was he could create Deathwing or Ravenwing or Dreadwing. Usually I would just create Deathwing all game long and build up for those frontline guys, and dropping a Cenobium and then a second Cenobium was always nice in events. In table, again, we're talking speed, and it's hard. There's no way to give them flanking in the Dark Angels at 9 energy. Like, you can hunt them down, but you're going to have to either have his cost reduced or have a drill site in order to play hunt them down the same turn you play Cenobium. Personally, I like the Ravenwing more, and I know that's going to be a little contradictory. I know a lot of people like Dreadwing basically have got Decor, and they've got Astravel, and they've also got Dreadwing Proctor, which is a solid card. That's a solid card, 5/5 with the damage everything quest. But I like the Ravenwing more for number one, for the combo with Hunt Them Down, giving a Ravenwing flank as well as +2/+2, and the fact that they're cheaper, so I'm not going so top heavy, and I can buff those, and that's more for Nemiel more than anything. I think Nemiel and Johnson, I've got more of a Ravenwing slant in my deck to keep consistently cheap bodies, big, buffed them up, get them out, flank them to hold the board, versus, dropping the Dreadwing to keep pressure on my opponent, and then late game shifting to large, beefed up Deathwing. But that's just me. I mean, that's the way I like it. I like hidden Zarian squad, with Johnson, especially now that his Reckoning is easier to hit with the quest ability. It's trickier in ladder play, or open play, I should say, because it's the same thing in practice too. I mean, your opponents are more likely to have tactics to deal damage to a 2/2, but if you have them buffed to a 3/3 or 4/4, or even late game you throw them out there with 2 or 3 other troops, you can pull off a quest or two pretty easy, and that could be enough to drop his Reckoning cheap. But that's just me. I like them more than I like the Dreadwing or the Deathwing, I should say.
Definitely all its own special place in my heart.
Yeah, that was going to be my exception to the rule, is Zarian squad in Lionel Johnson decks specifically, just because, as I've been saying on the Discord, I really like casting his Reckoning for 5. I feel like at that point it's really worth it.
Yeah,
And Zarian Squad's just insane at that.
you get them out early, and then it's just go time. It's like, look, you're going to deal with this little puny 2/2, and if you have to waste a card to get rid of this 2/2, then you've given me more options to play, something else higher up. If you can play like second turn a Pelagor, and then all your Zarian squads, your decks are 3/3s, that's nice. I also like the Mordwin squad. It gets more value with Nemiel for sure, if you can get those out there, or they've been hit, or they get a buff from an operator to core early on. And then for like 7 energy, you drop a Mordwin squad that has got like 6 or 7 attack, and then you use its ability to deal 6 or 7 damage. And now your opponent knows that they have to get rid of this, or you're going to just hit whatever they drop, or their warlord. That's just a strong combo, and it's really only 2 cards. I mean, there's also whether it's Nemiel's ability or other cards like Astravel or other buff troops like the Unbroken Vow. But at the end of the day, the actual execution of that card is 2-card combo at the very least. For 5 energy, you're getting a 4/6 that can deal 4 damage when it comes out. I like that.
That reminds me, though, we never actually mentioned what quests are. We've just been talking about. For the uninitiated, quests are little bonus tags slapped onto a troop that you can predetermine the completion requirement, whether it be damage a warlord in combat, take out another troop during an attack, or the last one is get targeted by a tactic that will trigger a bonus effect, such as Zorian's returning the hand.
Yeah, and Zarian's, just dealing damage to the enemy warlord, or if you know that they're going to play a tactic on it, you just pick that. Sometimes it's a gamble. Zarian squad against an enemy warlord like Captured Mandragorax, Abaddon, Loken, any warlord that can just deal 2 damage with the targeted, that's kind of a throwaway card at that point, which is unfortunate, but that's why you have to buff them.
I really do wish that the quest for targeting said tactic or ability. As far as the quest system in general goes, I really like it. As I mentioned, the Dark Angels are, at least like in my way of thinking, kind of the loyalist equivalent to the Alpha Legion in terms of being like secretive and duplicitous, despite the fact that they don't get that keyword.
Right. Well, I agree in terms of, like, it's a different mind game. When you have a quest troop out, your opponent has got to second guess how they're going to deal with that troop. And they've got to think, okay, you think that I'm going to do this to get rid of your troops, so therefore I should do the opposite, I think. Or sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. Like if they throw down an operator to core, and unless you've got a seek and destroy, your opponent 9 times out of 10 first turn is thinking, yeah, deal damage to the enemy warlord. It's got the highest rate of success, possible for that to happen. You'd actually have to surprise them to get past it. I like the quests. I was a little surprised that was their feature. I mean, I get that they're knights, that they kind of, their lore, fluff, flavor element is kind of that Arthurian questing knights of Caliban, but I didn't expect that. And at the same time, yeah, I think it's nice. It's an offensive, or it's a defensive. It's more of an offensive, I guess, because both of them, like two of the 3 can be used on your turn as opposed to your opponent's turn. So yeah, I don't mind the quest, and I think they're all. I don't think there's a single quest that like is a shitty quest. I think the closest one that I would say would probably be Brother Titus, because if they target it with a tactic that destroys it, then getting frontline and +2/+0 isn't going to do anything.
Titus, to me, I think his quest is fine. I think the card itself is not very good.
Well, that's true. And it's a common, so yeah.
But, and it's a vehicle.
Yeah.
Common vehicles in the Dark Angels.
Common vehicle with a 4 attack.
Yeah. Recipe
moments
for
like
disaster.
that make me think that maybe Dreadnought should gain Astartes tag, or Proto-Astartes tag. But then I remember some days I don't want to see a Marera Dreadnought with stacks and stacks and stacks of Dark Blessing.
No, he's already got the demon vehicle, thing. You wouldn't want to throw on an Astartes thing and then give him all the demon marks too, or marks of chaos.
That's not a world anyone wants.
No.
Quests are quite annoying though, because back to quests. I've been playing Ingo Peck lately, and every time I go up against a DA, I know for a fact that they're just going to set the tactic one, and now I can't use secret orders without giving them free quests.
Yeah, that's a gamble you're gonna have to take, man. Sometimes it's worth it. Like if they're like, deal 5 damage to a troop, you're like, I have no troops. But if they're Johnson, you're basically gonna give them a reckoning, like right out the gate.
Yep, that happened to me.
0 cost reckoning.
Well, speaking of quests, let's talk about the forbidden quests, right? Forbidden Secret.
Yeah, Forbidden Secret.
That is the quest that you can give your warlord, and they get one of 3. I think there used to be 5 different options, but they scaled it down. You've got the heal your warlord 5 times. You've got play a troop, I think it's with 7 attack or higher, 6 times?
I think it's 6 or higher.
6 or higher.
Yeah, 5 times.
5 times.
All of them are 5.
Yeah.
And then the other one is complete 5 quests.
Right.
The old ones, though, were like attack a troop 5 times and attack the other warlord 5 times or something like that.
Yeah, attack the enemy warlord was easier to do.
Especially as Courseway.
But with the way it worked, it was also, once it was completed, it got put into your deck, and then you had to draw it up again. What are your thoughts? Yeah, what are your thoughts up on Forbidden Secret as it works right now? Like, have you used it with a warlord effectively? I know we talked about Lion with his quest Reckoning. Have you squeezed in Forbidden Secret in there as well?
I've tossed it into my Red Lost deck a couple times. I really can't see a use for it. Like, it's a good card. You got to really build towards its effect to have a good time with it. Lion's pretty good for it because he can also get his Reckoning simultaneously, but I just can't have fun with it.
Yeah, my problem with Forbidden Secret is that, like, it just feels like after you put in so much work into this card that you still have to pay 3 to choose a secret that you can pay 3 to then play.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe that would have worked when, like, the top, or when, the decks that threaten people in the meta were, like, Conrad, so the game's going to take a long time. But, like, now, man, games go by fast. Knights get to 10 and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no time to do that, and even with the amount of frontline healing Dark Angels have, they don't have that much time. That's been my experience, is that just, it's like getting the Forbidden Secret to go off isn't all that hard, but freeing up the 6 energy to play to get an effect that might not even affect the board this turn, probably won't, is just a big ask.
I have to agree. I think if it was just the 3 energy to pick whatever the secret was and get that effect, would not be so bad. But that 6 energy point at that late in the game, that's half your energy for none of the, like, aside from giving your opponent's warlord sentence 2, none of those are going to do a whole lot for you. Like, I've never chosen the one that reduces, like, the cost of all your starties by, like, was it like 3 or 4? Because
the ones in hand.
Yeah, it's everything. But on top of that, like, by the time I get that, like, I usually only have like 3 or 4 cards in my hand anyway. So if I want that, I'll play Invincible Reason, or I'll play Hexagrammaton and get the key troops I want right then and there and play them. Giving your enemy warlord sentence 2 is nice, or dealing 5 damage is relentless is nice. But 6 energy that late in the game, after jumping through all the hoops to get to it, it's still a big letdown. Still kind of like, why? Where's the payoff? Like, the payoff is not going to happen.
One of the things I wanted to follow up on, it's like something I mentioned in the Discord. You're also starting -1 card in it.
Yes, that's huge.
And for the Lion, like, you just can't afford it, man.
No. That
gives you a 2-card starting hand. Like, between holding your Reckoning and holding this other card that aren't going to do anything for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How good do your other 2 cards have to be to make that hand winnable?
Right.
And a final aside for quests, I meant to bring it up when we were talking about Zarian Squad, who's, like, probably easily my favorite unit just because of Lionel Johnson and his revamped Reckoning. I actually, like, stole the soul from a ROM player earlier because I had played Zarian and I always picked damage to Warlord, and he would just attack it because it was free for him, right?
Oh,
he just
right.
kills my guy, heals back, no problem. And, like, at some point I had swept out his board, and so he decided he was going to stop giving me that, just stop letting me stall out ROM for free. But I had picked, be the target of a tactic, so he finally threw a tactic at it, and it went back to my hand. It was like, after like 3 times of hitting it with his warlord, he finally threw a tactic at it, and it was the wrong answer still.
Well, when they had Pelagor as the event warlord, Zarian squad was just like, that was icing on the cake with his ability. You drop Zarian squad, you make it a 3/3, and it's like a free 3 damage plus the 2 damage from his passive for completing a quest. That was like, you could just rapid fire win games with that.
Still can't believe they had the audacity to add better Titus in the event.
It was, I had fun. I had fun playing that guy.
Oh, I loved playing him, but the fact that he's just better Titus was funny.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish that he was just a warlord, because as I said, I'm a big fan of dreadnoughts, and like there's only a couple I think that we can play, because there's Cassian and technically Branthan.
Shapura.
Yeah.
And I think there might be one more, isn't there? I feel like there's a third.
No, that's all the dreads.
Is that it?
Not counting events.
Yeah, not counting event warlords. I guess that's true. If we don't count event warlords,
we got Brand.
None in the White Scars, none in the Blood Angels. Yeah, what a shame.
We need more.
It's always been such a cool unit type for me. And also like they typically end up being kind of underwhelming as far as cards go.
Yeah, I think
not always.
Like there are some shining exceptions. Like Rillinor is a great dreadnought as a troop enhancement ability.
The Night Angel or the Night Hunter one, the Night Lords. Jesus, I can't.
The one that can attack or the one that gain more attack. Both are pretty good.
Yeah, yes. Both Night Lords dreadnoughts.
Yeah, the Reaper of Kaldrak, and then also Ancient Marcellus, the Ultramarines is got a good dreadnought. Telemon dreadnought's good.
What else we got? The Word Bearers are good on paper, but you'll never see them used because the Word Bearers benefit so much from their starties.
Yeah.
Right.
Sally's got a meh one and then a really good one.
Yeah, their legendary is good. Their epic is not. Like, don't get fooled. That epic dreadnought is not good at all.
Looks good on paper. Don't use it.
No.
Oh, and I guess there's Rylanor.
Yeah. Scott said Rylanor. He just said the name in a weird way, so I had to double take.
Rillinor. I pronounce it Rillinor. I go with the soft Y.
I overpronunciate that Y. It's Rylanor.
Oh, okay. All right. Hey.
I've doubled down.
Double down on that Y.
That's what you got to do.
With we talked about the quests. We've talked a little bit about the wings. I want to dive a little bit more into the wings, and then we'll talk about, I guess, the tactics, and they kind of go for rarity, like cards of choice. In terms of the wings, which would you say is like your top card for each wing? And that's a hard call, but at least the wings. Like, we're not talking non-wing troops, because there's a couple good troops that don't have a wing on them.
Alright, I'm going to pull up my list real quick. Alright, so this is going to be rapid fire round. Dreadwing? Oh, Decor. Easily. Decor is such a good troop for what he does and for his value. He's a 2/3 for 2. Doesn't sound that great on paper. There's plenty of 2/3s in the game. But his quest, give +2/+2 to a random Dark Angels Astartes, or sorry, troop even. You can hit vehicles in your hand. Right there, if that's played on curve like your first round and you have it as deal damage to the enemy warlord, you are almost guaranteed to have a troop now +2/+2 over its original stat curve. Without a doubt, my favorite Dreadwing. Deathwing, I just love Oathsworns. The fact that they have, what's it called, First Strike, it's amazing. You stack him up with, Decor or even Nemiel, and suddenly you now have a machine that's going to delete any big troop they put down. The Ravenwing, Ravenwing's a bit iffy on me. I like them. Half the time I don't even realize what troops are Ravenwing. Like I keep forgetting the speeder flankers are Ravenwing, the ones that can gain cleave. I love those guys. They've saved me, and they've also ruined my day multiple times played by enemies.
Yeah. So for Dreadwing, I prefer Astrovel. Like I love Dekur, and when he goes off, he's great. But like Astrovel's put in a lot of work for me. In the games where you get his battle honor, it's really hard to lose.
Some days I forget he exists. Not like fair. Exists in total, but exists as a Dreadwing.
Yeah, he got that tag added later. For Deathwing, I think mine just goes to Ramiel. because again, another unit they got Deathwing added later. Just because of all the Deathwing cards that have like super high ceilings, he just always does what I need him to do. Because like I've definitely had Deathwing companions popped before I could buff anybody. Like Oathsworns get removed somehow in some way I didn't expect, and like the other guys have had their quests fail, but Ramiel's just usually reliable to deal 5 or 6 damage, and I'm a big fan of that. For Ravenwing, it's hard for a troop. Like, obviously I have fondness for Zarian Squad in one specific deck. And I don't know, it's probably like the real answer is probably hunt them down, but I guess the honorable mention goes to Swift Wrathspeeder.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I agree with Ramiel for me for Deathwing. Like you said, like you're gonna get, unless you're playing against a warlord who doesn't run troops, you're gonna get that damage off. You're gonna be able to take care of a troop, and then on top of that, you get a very solid body on the board. He's just a great legendary. Deathwing, I also like Astrovel. It's a hard call between Decor and Astrovel. I think depending on how you build a deck, if you're going for a diverse portfolio in troops, I don't think either one is wrong over the other, but I think Astrovel, if you've got 5 or 6 cards in hand, I'd rather have 5 or 6 troops gain +1/+1 versus one troop that may not be the one I want it to be, gain +2/+2. Not to mention, getting a battle honor off just once to make everybody +2/+2 is nice. So I would probably go with that. Ravenwing, the Wrathspeeders are nice because they've got flank. They can gain cleave too. They usually pair so nicely. I think I've got them in my decks more than others, but the Mordwin squad for me is a close second, just because of how it works with Hunt Them Down, how it works with Nemiel. Late game can be devastating. On the downside, anybody playing Sabotage or Jam Troops against Nemiel or Dark Angels in general kind of really takes the wind out of my sails. So that is a big, that's a big sad when that happens. So I would probably say the Wrathspeeders, because at the very least you're going to get their flank. You're going to take care of what troop you need to get, plus cleave 2. What's not to like? And the fact is, I mean, even though they're a vehicle, there are cards that do buff Dark Angels troops. Therefore, that Swift Wrathspeeder could become a very beefy troop when it comes out for 4 energy. It could still become a 6/5 or even a 5/4, which is enough to stick around on board. So I like that.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about tactics.
Let's talk about tactics.
We talked a little bit about Forbidden Secret, but with the other tactics that the Dark Angels have got, they've got a lot of damage dealing tactics. They've got some control tactics. They've got prisoner custody. They've got the healing card, right? The redemption. Then they've got a lot of buff. They've got what? If we count their hard removal, if we count Deathwing Companions, the Unbroken Vow, Principia Bellicosa, and Brothers in Arms. And Always on Duty. I mean, that's like 5 tactics that buff troops. So they don't have a whole lot of, random shake-up stuff, crazy things. It's just sticking to the basics. Deal damage, buff troops, and then like prisoner custody is kind of the one exception where it's like, hey, just shut this troop down altogether. I'm curious because I have a suspicion. What would you say is your top Dark Angels tactic, and then what is your second?
Top tactic?
Yeah.
Hunt Them Down's a lot of fun. It's a load of fun. Slap them on. Well, the Ravenwings tend to be flankers already, but getting them up with some stat bonuses has always been nice to me. I like Excaton. I've had some good hands with Excaton, so I'm guessing I'll just give it to Excaton and call me a sucker here, but I'll give it to Excaton and Hunt Them Down. The legendaries are good. Don't get me wrong, Invincible Reason's fun, but it tends to be like so late into the game where I only ever see it as a win more option. It saved me like once. And the Hexagon never gave me anything good.
I don't know, for me, my favorite is probably Deathwing Protocol. I like hard removal. I like buffing guys in hand. I've never ended up in a situation where I only have one troop in hand when I fire it off. So I've always gotten the full value out of it. As far as a second, for a long time it was prisoner custody, but I don't know, recently that card's kind of fallen out of favor for me. So it, not to just copy everybody, but it probably goes to hunt them down, just because it's really nice to be able to fulfill a quest on demand. You can just set the quest to destroy an enemy troop and then automatically get it. Like super devastating with Astrovel because if it was a troop that didn't have 5 attack, suddenly not only did you get your +1, but you got another one and you killed a guy. It's horrible.
Interesting. I was expecting you to say Eschaton Imperative.
So like well, okay. I'll be real. I'm just tragically unlucky with card games, and so every time I have Eschaton Imperative in my hand, my opponent only plays 1/9/9 guy.
Well, that'll favor that salt.
Yeah. I played against Defenders of Caliban exactly one time, and when they finally put down 6 dudes, I had no guys in my.
Oh, that's sad.
It really is. As devastating as that card has been against me, because I play a lot of defenders, man, it's never there when you need it. And like, I'll probably get into that later if we, go over like the faction as a whole, but that's kind of a running theme for me with the Dark Angels.
Well, I like Eschaton Imperative. I think that's, for me, it's hard to pass as that being my number 1. Although I don't run 2 of it in my decks. I think there's only one deck that I actually run 2 of it. I run it as 1, but I just, in terms of how it can swing a game, if used appropriately, I hate seeing people use it at 5 energy and get rid of 1 troop, because maybe they lower the cost of 2 cards in their hand by 1. But they weren't able to play anything that turn, so I still get to play troops on my turn. I like using it later when I've got 8 energy, and I can wipe my opponent's 2 or 3 cards off the board, and then still play 2 or 3 troops. It depends on the matchup, it depends on the game. But I like that because, if you get 3 troops, and you've got a 5-card hand with that have got, Dark Angels cards in it, right? You've cut your energy cost by 5. That's better than playing 1 abandoned supplies. That's the way I see it, at least. So I like it. I like that. I like the change to it. I know a lot of people get sour by it, depending on what they're playing. Although it's probably the easiest card to play around. If you're playing Dark Angels, don't set yourself up to have a whole bunch of troops at 2 health or less, because you're guaranteed that that's the turn that they're going to play the Eschaton Imperative on you. But I like it. For me, second, I like the Lexicon of Glory. I like that 4 cost. I like dealing 4 for 4. I always kind of gravitate towards cards like that. Chariot of the Gods, Octo. The heal 4 to a friendly troop gets overlooked a lot, but I have used that several times to keep my Oathsworn Terminators alive, or to pump up my health on Astrovel so he can hit 1 more Battle Honor. If it's not imperative, at the very least, late game, I can throw that down and I can deal 4 damage to the enemy warlord. So I just like Lexicon. I like dealing damage. So that's my take. Those are my 2 favorite tactics. And I like the fact that they're both rares. I don't think, in terms of legendaries, I don't think Invincible Reason or the Forbidden Secret is necessary for the Dark Angels.
Yeah, I've never, as I've mentioned, I took unluck at character creation, so Invincible Reason, I will always have like 4 Astartes in hand, and the only one with frontline won't be made free.
And it'll be like 2 of the other ones will be like the 2/2s. You're like, that's great, thanks.
Yeah, like when you draw Captain Asterisk the turn that you want to play Invincible Reason, you know that you're doomed.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I had been babysitting like Deathwing Companions, Oathsworns, and Ramiel like the whole game before Lions changed, and then I drew Asterisk, like got Invincible Reason, and it made Ramiel Terminators and Asterisk free. I was like, man, these Deathwing Companions are looking real foolish right now.
Well, they'll come out next turn, after that, if you survive.
Oh, yeah, you won't.
No. You need that front line.
I don't know. That's been kind of my issue with them as a whole, I guess, is they have so many good control tactics, and like they have enough frontline guys that you'd think that they'd be like an instant control faction. But really, 3 out of their 4 warlords don't end up playing like that very well. Like obviously, Corswain does, because with enough energy, he can just kill anything.
Mm-hmm.
But,
yeah, I think that's what the next thing to talk about is really the warlords, because, like you said, they don't play. They play differently. You know, they've got these frontline troops. They've got troops that can really deal damage to the board, or at the very least, you know, build a board that can last a while. But they can't do it easily right out the gate. At least Nemiel and Lionel Johnson can't. Red Loss can deal damage, but he doesn't do anything for his troops. Corswain has got that special card, his duelist, that really leaves you that option for a lot of late game comboing or lethal range. Like the lethal window on Corswain is huge compared to the other 3 warlords. But they all play differently. Like Nemiel buffs troops, Red Loss is kind of a board suppressor. Johnson's new ability is more for consistency in getting the troops out, as well as the Reckoning option. Although I really think him losing the create a troop is unfortunate, because you know your deck is 30 cards, and you can only fit so many wing troops in your deck, and if you don't have those cards in your deck, you're not going to ever create them now. That option is just lost to you. So you've got to choose between putting, you know, cards that you wouldn't always put in there, because otherwise you're not going to get it. You're not going to get multiple Romuls in a game. You're going to have to make space for that Seraphest Bikes, because you can't just guarantee that he can create a Ravenwing every turn and increase the chances of getting the Seraphest Bikes. I
was definitely on the team that wanted his ability to be, you know, choose one.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, as you had mentioned, that's probably too powerful. To give him, you know, choose a wing and then get 3 options. But
right. Yeah.
It really sucked to pick Ravenwing. Like, man, I hope that I get one of the 3 good cards, and you get Legionary Boreal, who is a good card in some decks, but not in the Lion when you're trying to draw them randomly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1/1.
Yeah, and it's like late game, if you create a Boreal, when you could create a wing, you tended not to create Ravenwings late game. You shifted to Deathwing because you knew that they were going to be hardy, they were going to give you frontline options. So there was more flexibility there, whereas now you're like, oh, I guess I'll draw, oh, there's only 5 troops left, and they're all the shitty Ravenwing that I haven't drawn earlier in the game. Wonder what I'll get. Like, his ability just loses anything there. So with all that said, I know Corswain is the popular choice. He plays well, and I gotta say, I mean, since I started trying him out, he does a lot better than I was playing with him prior to, when I didn't have all the Dark Angels cards, and I can definitely understand why he is so good. That lethal range is so nice. With his duelist card, with a card like, you know, Orders from Terra, being able to use that twice if you buffed up his attack. Plus he has First Strike, so that helps reduce the draw window, you know. I think he just has a lot going for him that can then add to the pressure that the troops are putting on the table, whereas the other 3 really kind of help support the troops more than themselves. That being said, I like Red Loss and I like Nemiel a lot, but I can understand why Corswain is very popular. What are your guys' opinions on the 4 warlords? Who have you played the most of? Who have you enjoyed the most? And who have you enjoyed the least, and why?
I've probably played the most out of Red Loss, simply because, well, when he was an option, my launch won him. Even though we were all aggressively pushing for Holdwin. He's been a blast. His random ping damage was fun. When he first came out and was actually broken, his interaction with the Forbidden Secret, that was a good time.
Oh, yeah. That was nice, because he had the ability. That was before they changed Forbidden Secret, and he was just destroying troops with his ability counted towards his quest. Which
is all fun and games until he can remove 2 to 3 troops in one ability to sitch every match.
Yeah.
That was scary. It haven't happened a lot, but it happened enough times where I went, okay, this is not fun. I guess the one I had the least amount of fun with was Lion. Like, Menial and Courseway, I had some good times either buffing, or to quote, you Scuff, juicing them boys.
That's right.
Or, just aggroing myself into a brick wall, and the minute a troop that spawns that I don't like, I just use my special card to delete as Courseway. That was always a fun time. Lion is just like, I produce a troop. I get this is the third Deathwing companion in a row I just produced, so I have no board. It's just not my playstyle.
Yeah, probably the one that I've put the most time in with is Nimiel. It was actually a funny aside on the main Discord. For a long time, my name on there was Nimiel's extra card until they gave it back, because they previewed him and he said starts with an extra card, and then when he finally came out, he didn't have it, and it was just like, man, he was struggling more so even than the other Dark Angels warlords, because Dark Angels got like a huge list of buffs. They had to buff so many troops because they came out so weak, and they've consistently gotten better, and it's to the point where I can't say that any of the Dark Angels troops or tactics are objectively bad anymore, because Coursewayne's been a top 5 warlord ever since that buff, essentially. And part of that's due to the fact that he is a natural predator to knights, but everybody else, he still does very well. But yeah, I put in a lot of games with Nimiel. That deck's super fun. Unfortunate that it starts with 30 health, because so many decks are able to beat down on it. And it's also like I wish that I could find a way to play Forbidden Secret with him. Because he starts with that extra card, so it mitigates the problem of that. But he just doesn't play games long enough. Nimiel's whole point is to play a guy on curve, and it's twice as big as your guy. Other than that, I played a lot of Lion. Still haven't made a deck that does better than 50-50. He just even after they made him into Big Holguin, it just doesn't seem to do it. And I still haven't really given Red Loss enough of a chance. I need to, but I just, every time I throw something together for him, I don't like how it ends up, and I scrap it and come back the next day, and I've been doing that for 2 months.
And I know I've shared the deck, on the lodges, and I've got a video for the Red Loss Hexagrammaton deck, where it uses Hexagrammaton and specific wing choices for Ravenwing and Dreadwing, and then just goes off at 10 energy, but you've got to get to 10 energy. I have fun playing that deck. It plays like clockwork. I enjoy that. But, and I'm not that I'm saying I dislike Red Loss. I have more fun playing Nemiel for just those reasons, like, increasing troops to get them super, super buffed up and nasty out the gate is really nice. Especially if you've got like late game, the damage that like a Melgator can do is insane. You get Melgator starts out as a 1/3, and maybe over the course of several turns he turns into like a 5/7, and then he returns a troop to hand. You've got this 5/7 troop that costs 2 energy. It's kind of crazy. Like, it doesn't happen often. Usually it's better with the troops, like I said, like Mordwin Squad is a favorite to use that with, and get them really pumped up very high, and then drop them down for like at least at the 7 energy turn, use their ability and have great board control. The downside to Nemiel is his health, but if you are lucky with the buffs on the troops that you've got with him, you can get plenty of frontline troops juice up those frontline boys, and keep alive. Whether that is with using the like a Adravian Moors and healing for 7 because they complete their quest, or if it's something fancier. I just like that. I like Nemiel more. I think Coursewayne, like I said, I recognize how valuable Coursewayne can be. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm going to probably play Coursewayne a little bit more. Johnson, I've not gotten anything out of. I'm in the same boat with you. With even following the buff, like it's fun getting his Reckoning now. I can get a lot more easier, but I can't seem to break much higher than that 50% mark. It just is so hard to do, And that's unfortunate. Like, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that that he had just a little extra something to kind of push it, not too high, but just like it felt like, okay, you have a little bit more in your control. But drawing a troop, you've got to build your deck right, and even then, there's so many good wing cards. If you put in all Deathwing, you're not guaranteed to get the Deathwing that you're going to want. If you put in too few of a certain wing troop, then are you doing your deck any favor? Or are you actually, damaging how effective your deck could actually be? It's hard to say. At the end of the day, I like Nemiel more. I guess that's probably what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I kind of misspoke earlier. It's funny to me that they have so many cards that are like kind of aligned to a control strategy. Like you mentioned earlier, they've got a lot of damage, they got a lot of removal, and they try to play like a fairly late game curve. Like a lot of their late game units are very good, like Deathwing Companions. But like their best deck is Corswain, who gets up in your face. He gets to put out so much damage so quickly. It's just I don't know. That's been kind of my frustration. Like I played a lot of Corswain early because I do like the victory screen. But everybody else, even Nemiel, like Nemiel's fun, but I don't think I would really consider it for a lot of ladder play. And yeah, man, the Lion is just the eternal struggle. I get where they're going with his ability, and like the card pool should support it in theory, but I don't know. The game always just seems over too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like by the time I finally feel like I'm in control of the game, it's over. I've got 3 health.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. I don't know if it'll change much. I think there's going to have to be some changes within the game itself and the meta of other factions before that would feel differently. At the state of the game is in now, I mean, if you get to 10 energy, you should have the game close to wrapped up, because if you don't, odds are your opponent is going to, and that's not going to do you any good. So yeah, it's hard for me just to say. It's hard for me to say that I don't think there is a better way to play them as they are currently, if that makes sense. Like I wish that wasn't the case, but I just don't think there is. Gosh, I'm trying to think if I got anything else on that, like any other thoughts I can come up with. I don't think so. I think that's really all I've got to say about the warlords. I like them. At the same time, I feel they're kind of locked in their role, and I think part of that is the meta, not necessarily them themselves, but I think just in terms of how the meta currently is, that is limiting their play. That being said, you can you can have fun.
Right now we're at right now, I think we're at, what's the official count, like 98 warlords. So I mean, they can't all be fantastic on the ladder. There's the most you can ask for is that they all end up being like noticeably different from one another, and I think they succeeded on that in the Dark Angels. Like, I don't feel like Red Loss plays like Corswain or Corswain plays like Nemiel or anything like that.
Well, who Lion plays like? He plays like Coldwin.
Yeah. Yeah.
That actually curious about that. What are they going to do now? Because originally their plan was to bring in the extra warlords eventually, and we lost during events. What are they going to do with Holdwin? What will his new ability be?
If we're going to get a 5th warlord, honestly, I would rather be. I can't say I'd rather be Brother Titus, but Brother Titus is an actual common card. So that's a good question. I think that's a fair question. I don't have an answer.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what they would have done to Lion if Holguin had won the event. Like, how would they have tried to fix him?
Who knows? They may give us Holguin that's just old Lion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they just give him 35 health and Lion's old ability. They're like, you'll never play this because it's not good.
Right.
But here he is.
Without any reckoning. You remember when this ability was something nobody wanted? Here you go.
Right. Enjoy your leftovers.
Yeah. Well, and at that point in the game, I mean, maybe they'll come up with another ability, or there'll be some other variants. I really hope we get 5 or 6, like a 5th and a 6th for each faction. But I think a 5th is probably just more likely what we'd end up with.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think that I don't even think that they're limited between having, a card be both a card and a warlord. So obviously they probably wouldn't do that at first because they want to get as many characters represented as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't write off having Titus as a playable warlord sometime in the future.
No, I do miss my Dread Boys. Dread Boys.
I think that would eventually be a really cool change. And like you said, the game shows no signs of slowing down, which is always appreciated. I like seeing signs of life in a new game, and so for the guys who probably stand out as the least impressive of the factions that were released in their expansion, I still think that they've managed to do the Dark Angels mostly right.
Mhm.
Obviously the Lion is still in a weird spot, but maybe that's just kind of where he's stuck for a while.
Yeah.
I feel like if the game slows down, he'll do better. Because
I think if the game slowed down, or if there's a good couple cards, like if they were to change Invincible Reason or Forbidden Secret, I think that could be something. Although the problem with that is, you change those cards unless you're making them geared, tooled specifically for Johnson. You could really just be strengthening Corswain.
It's the old how do you buff Grieger Fellhand without ruining Russ?
Right.
Because obviously from Corswain, we know that the Dark Angels cards aren't bad, because he's been casually chilling at the top of the meta for a long time. But yeah, the other and there's a lot of factions that are like that. Perturabo's been also up top, but Draeger's pretty low now compared to what he used to sit at.
Mm-hmm.
Forex and Falk are popular in practice, but not really anywhere else.
No, I think Falk could still do well as a glass cannon, but doing well as a glass cannon doesn't mean doing well consistently. You can take out knights just fine if everything goes off, but if it doesn't, then you're not.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, overall impressions, as far as the Dark Angels, where they are at currently, we've had, I think we've had 2.5 waves of patch that have hit for the Dark Angels. Obviously, they had a very significant patch. They had a couple minor changes to a couple key cards, warlords as well. Given all that, where do you feel, like, overall impressions, like, how would you rank them from a scale of 1 to 10? And obviously, I know they're one of your favorite ones, but like, how are they? Are you playing them more than?
Oh, just like gameplay power wise?
Yeah.
So like the faction as a whole, I'd probably honestly give a 6 and give Corswain like a 12. And so when it balances out, he ends up being somewhere in the 9s, because like I said, obviously there's a top tier deck that has a lot of Dark Angels cards in, but and it's part of it's because of my permanent curse, because Lion and Nimiel both kind of end up playing sort of a mid-range strategy, and the downfall of mid-range decks is drawing the wrong answer at the wrong time, and I'm skilled at doing that. So I don't know, it's probably a low number compared to other people's estimation, but that's just kind of how I feel about them. I feel like I really have to go out of my way to earn with the Dark Angel. Whenever I lose, it feels more like that was just like an average game.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the exception again of Corswain, who is ridiculous, probably one of the better warlords in the game overall.
I'm really hoping that the duelist card is just Sigmund's ability. I keep saying that because I want it to be true. I just want Sigmund to have pay 2 energy, gain +2 attack and first strike this turn, and bloodthirsty.
I want Lucius's battle honor to give him Survivor 1.
Oh, that could be interesting. Gain Survivor 1, connect again. Time will tell. Lucius could get changed, whenever they get back around to those Isstvan 3 factions.
Whenever they remember the issue about the 3 factions exist.
Yeah, they're out there. I play them. I like Sons of Horus still. I have fun with them. What would you say, Axel? How would you rate the Dark Angels?
Solid 7. Corswain being, Corswain fuck train. I don't know if you've ever heard me call him that, but I do often. The Astartes tend to be, they're not understated, luckily. They're not like Iron Hands, where they're expected to be buffs, so they start off lower.
Mm-hmm.
So at least they come out on value. Wisp buffs and their quest mechanic and wings themselves, they're not awful. I can't rate them low on that. They're also not just like, they're not coming out swinging and broken. So I'd say there's a 7. They're pretty mundane. Horsewing carries most of the faction on his back, and the other ones are just fun alternatives. Except Lion, who's just Lion. Their tactics are good, so
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I want to score them a little bit lower just for the simple fact that that they're not dominant. But I don't think they need to be dominant to be just solid. I think they really are. I think they play fine in events, as we've seen. They can play great. Their cards are good. They can be a little slow at times, and depending on the warlord or your deck build. And they really are a faction with the wing concept and the way their cards work. They really are a faction that really ties into how well you build your deck. Like, you can't just slap in the best cards in there, because some of those cards might not gel with each other the best way. You might end up having 7 Deathwing, 7 Dreadwing, and 7 Ravenwing, but your deck might actually be better off if you had, 10 of one wing and 2 of the others. So it really ends up being less the cards themselves, but also the strength of deck building that can really drive how effective they are. And I think that's one reason why Corswain is so good, because his ability doesn't negate that, but it allows for it gives you some forgiveness. If you don't build the deck correctly, you still have a very strong ability to rely upon, regardless of what's in your hand. Your lethal range is going to get higher the longer the game goes. Whereas with the other warlords, your lethal range is contingent upon what cards you draw, how you built your deck, and how you combo or execute how you get those cards from your hand on the board. Corswain has that as an option, but he also has his ability to use as well. So I think that's why he does so well, because he kind of falls into the classic, not necessarily aggro trap, but the classic strengths that other warlords like him have seen before, where they just, not to mention he's got more health than Lucius, but he's got high attack range. You can throw in a couple of tactics to increase that. Orders from Terra. He's got his built-in ability to, with that first strike option, to take care of high health troops that are in the way if you need to. But I can't say that their cards, like, there's a couple cards in there that I'm like, I'm all right about, I'm iffy on, but if you build your deck the right way, you could actually make very good use of that card. So yeah, I gotta say, I think they're a 7 too. I think as far as a faction goes, they're solid. But I do think part of the strength in getting the most out of them is building your deck just so. And if it's not working and there's cards that you're just not getting when you want, or you're not getting the most out of, I think they are probably one of the best examples to say, hey, take a look at your deck and maybe you need to pull some cards and put some different ones in.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I forgot to mention their power in limited events, because we've had, was it the past 2 or the past 3 had Dark Angels in them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I am sick to death of the draft mirror Dark Angels experience.
Oh yeah.
As much as I love Dark Angels, man, they are really, really oppressive in events.
Yeah. I had a blast playing in the raid event, and I mean I pumped out a ton of points and wins, but the Titus and the Pelagor matches, those were fun, but at the same time, they really came down to like 1 or 2 plays. And if you don't play it right, if your opponent makes a misplay, that's game over. If they played that card and they didn't use the ability to enhance the stats of this one troop, or they didn't use their counterattack, or you got to use your counterattack with the right card, as well as it was so like the razor's edge in terms of those mirror matches. And compared to playing other opponents just with any other warlord, it was like, this is just a regular game. This is easy.
I was gonna say, one of the reasons that I've played so much of the Dark Angels is that, is as you mentioned, the possibilities for tuning a deck are really endless, and like it feels like every week, because of the nature of like your cards kind of trading one for one a lot, you know, you have to find yourself putting in new one-ofs every week to deal with whatever's happening on the ladder or whatever's happening in practice, you know, wherever you play. I find that the deck's never really complete. Like you keep having to change it to make exceptions to whatever's out there. And I guess that's kind of part of the frustration, right? That you can't just have these 30 best cards that, you know, just always go in the deck.
That's definitely true, especially because if you're taking out one or two cards, if that shifts your wing dynamic, you might have to change 3 or 4 cards to counterbalance that, as opposed to just the one tweak out.
Right. And another thing was that I actually noticed this like earlier today. I was you know, just trying to get my dailies done and figured I'd throw out some games with the Lions so that, you know, I could play 20 games in order to win 5. But a thing that I realized was that how many of my games came down to what I chose when I played Pelagor and why. Because it goes beyond deck building. It's like you really have to kind of, you know, be just 100% aware of all your plays. You know, there aren't many heuristics that you can rely on with Dark Angels. You have to kind of make the conscious decision for each quest choice, for each, you know, wing choice of what you chose to draw or what you chose to buff. And like it gets hard, you know, it's hard when you have that many moving pieces, because if you lose the game at the end, it's hard to figure out where you went wrong, right?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think they are probably, they're not the only, but they're one of the few, and they definitely are a thinking play. You know, I think Alpha Legion fall into that camp, and probably Death Guard too, to some degree. Some people might wonder why, but I mean, like, just in terms of playing, when you play a troop, when you stun, when you poison, etc., etc. But they're not a controlled faction. They're not a control faction, but they play in that regard where you really have to have a cerebral game. You have to be on point. You can't just throw stuff down.
When I was like re-going through the card list, I was like, man, they sure do have a lot of control cards despite having no control deck.
Yeah.
You know, it's like...
Well, yeah, prisoner custody is like the ultimate control if it sticks, you know.
Yeah, I definitely had a couple of games where I was able to frustrate a large enemy by just being like, actually, you need to wait until I'm ready.
Like slapping it on a demon after they put down a big demon. Like, okay, well, have fun with that maintenance 5. That's not going anywhere. And now you've forever, or a Custodes, you know. Don't see too many Custodes lately, so we'll have to look into them somewhere down the road.
I don't know, maybe their place in the meta kind of got moved because the Custodes' whole thing was like, yeah, we have this drawback, but we play bigger guys than you. Dark Angels also play some pretty big guys.
No drawbacks there whatsoever. You know, that's for sure. And not to mention, I mean, you've got like the Knights houses who are just like, here, well, we play big weapons, and there's no drawback. We also have a second energy resource.
They all have fast as well.
Yeah, what's not to like?
I was really, I was like bound and determined not to talk about Knights.
I gotta mention them. I don't want to go off on them. I mean, they exist. They're there. There's something that we're dealing with. You know.
At least they're bad in event.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
and they're not even bad. Like I'll play Cyprian because I wish we had gotten it Kinnerak. But you know, sometimes it's good, and other times it's really a struggle.
Like if it's just Knights versus Knights, the event seems to run better. But if you have an Astartes option in the events compared to Knights, it has not worked out in the Knights' favor. I think the last time they were in, they got smashed by Horus, which was the first time we had draft. So.
Oh, but Horus had 4 Vengeful Spirits in his
4
deck.
Vengeful Spirits or 6 Chariot of the Gods. What's not to like?
Yeah, it's just like, the only way to interact with a knight is direct damage, and Horus is pretty good at that. Yeah.
Well,
not good at, you know, talking about his feelings, but he's really good about dealing damage.
He's good at drawing cards and breaking arms. Well, we've reached that point, I think, where we kind of tail in. I think we covered a lot with the faction as far as lore, warlords, card strengths. Overall, we'll go one more closing thought on the faction. What is your number one card? If you had to make a recommendation for somebody to pick up a Dark Angels card in the shop, what's the first card, the number one card that they must have?
If I had to give them one card that's like make or break for a lot of the decks, I still actually say is Raphael. Even though like he's kind of seen a falling in play.
Oh, Israfel?
Really solid for
I'd like to see the alternative reality where Ramael could target warlords for just a day. Give me that for a day, please.
And funnily enough, Israfel was also the only card that I was missing from Dark Angels, like for the longest time. So I'm going to be biased towards that.
Okay,
that's fair.
As far as can't miss items, especially for the decks that want to play later, they'll do that right now. But his value is definitely apparent if he manages to resolve.
I don't know, for the legendaries, there's no real make or break to me. You can grab Pelgator. Pelgator is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Pelgator is just good because of his rally.
Yeah, it's a given. Like, you're going to get that rally.
Yeah. Ramael, still an amazing legendary. Easily one of their classics, because Invincible Reason and Forbidden Secret they exist.
Yeah.
I just want the alternate reality where Ramael can target.
If he could target warlords, that could be game winning by himself. Like, if you get him buffed up to like 7 or 8 attack. I would say Ramiel. I think Ramiel wasn't the last legendary that I got, but he was the one that once I got him, I visibly could see the difference in games where I got him and I was able to play him. Versus before when I never had him as an option. That rally deal damage is really big. They've all got great cards. There's great cards of all rarity, and that's a legendary, so I understand it's a little bit higher, but I think compared to everything else, like, that is a must-buy. Like, that's not something I would recommend anybody pass on at all. That would be my number one recommendation. So, or Corswain, just pick up Corswain.
Might as well. And if he's not in shop by the time you're hearing this, he will be soon.
That's true. He's coming. Just give it time.
Yeah. Pick up Corswain. You don't even need Dark Angels cards. You just need
Corswain, 2 times orders from Terra, and some drill sites. Go.
Corswain fun.
Yeah. Play some mortar strikes. They'll always home true.
They go right where you want them to. It never fails. All right. Well, tail doving it, or tail wrapping things up here. What are you guys up to outside Legions right now?
I'm not doing much. I've just been, playing some games. Nothing real important. Just playing like old PC games. The old Fallout, Stalker. I haven't been doing too much interesting things. Still running my tabletop campaign. People haven't killed themselves yet. Parties no longer losing their minds. Things going nice.
Mm-hmm.
Finally got back into Legions. Because I've been on the fence about playing Legions. I kind of got burnt out. But I started playing Ingopec lately, and I learned how real fun Ingopec can be. Everything's just mind games.
It's a fun game. It's a fun way to play, man. I'm telling you.
And I've truly learned to appreciate the Alpha Legion's Astartes and their value they bring, instead of just playing them for, like, tactic spam.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I fell in love with Headhunter, Kill Team. That guy's great.
Oh, yeah, with the sneak attack, 6/4 stealth?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If he gets that stealth off, he's going to stick around.
How about you, Howie?
I've kind of been in the same boat doing some video games. Recently ended up being the Lodge Master of Skitarii due to all other qualified members declining. But I've been trying to do that, and rope people together for an event. I've been really trying out the event more and more. Because I really fell off for a while, even when they changed it to draft. Like, I would just kind of, do enough to get whatever point amount I felt was, okay, and then would not really dive into it. But been having a bit of fun with that. Besides that, haven't really done much in the way of physical card games recently. I was doing that a lot the last time I was on, but it's kind of slowed down even more. So. Yeah, just been basically just doing that, getting more into Legions, actually, kind of the opposite story.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, for me, I don't know, depending on where you're at, I know I've heard that, card games last year, since the pandemic, have had an upswing. And I believe, not just in terms of the games getting played, but I believe there's been some articles. A lot of people have wagered that card game collecting is like the next thing to get into and invest. I don't know where this stems from. I don't know who and what investors are giving out this information or recommendations. Probably the same people who helped bail out GameStop there at the end. I don't know, but it is like it's been ages for me since I have seen a card game, like a booster or a starter or a booster box on a shelf. Now, granted, in my area, I don't have a local game store. I've got Walmart and I've got Walgreens. But Walmart typically carries Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. Usually. The one here I haven't seen anything on the shelf since before Christmas. And I'm kind of getting a little worried. And I know that the games are out there. I know they're still getting made. And maybe I just have to drive to another town, take an hour and a half drive to find a store that might carry the stuff. But yeah, I have not seen a card game out there for a while. And I think it's just people are snapping them up. That's my thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah, I've kind of heard that because a friend of mine works in card games and says, like product's still moving like crazy. It's just, right now nobody can really go to an event, at least not in the States.
Right. Yeah.
Said it's going to be a huge deal when they open events back up. Like the first Magic Grand Prix is probably going to be a fire hazard. Like there's going to be way too many people.
People just clamoring to try to get in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's jonesing to get back into events. The first YCS for Yu-Gi-Oh is going to be absolutely bananas, and same for a Pokemon regional. It's just all going to be
just to shuffle
massive.
And sleeve a deck again would be nice. I have no reason to. I have no game that I'm playing actively where I need that, but I miss that. I miss the textures in my hand.
Not like that. I have no reason.
I would say I'm actually the opposite, Scuff. I play card games so that I can shuffle cards in public and nobody will think I'm crazy.
Well, that's it depends on how you shuffle too.
Yeah,
that's what he wants us to believe.
Yeah. I just don't want anybody to think that off the bat. They got to talk to me first.
So that's a long con he's got going.
Yeah.
I just convince people I'm practicing magic tricks.
Right. Yeah. Are you going to be, speaking of, physical card games, are you going to be getting in on those Warhammer 40,000 commander decks?
Yes. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last episode where they were coming out. Granted, I probably won't play anybody with them, but when they come out, right. I'm going to pick those up. I've made up my mind, especially because they're commander decks. They're not going to be a whole set that I have to collect, like buy 5 or 6 boxes of this game. I can just buy the commander deck packs. That'll make it really easy for me. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
For me, it depended on like who's in it, right? If it's a character that I care about, I'll probably pick it up because I'll be honest, I haven't sat down and played a game of Commander in like 2 years. It's been a minute.
I think we'll get. I don't think. Can't say I don't think. I would be surprised if Magic is going to do 40K and then they just throw out some chubs for the cards, and there's like no name characters. There's no Abaddon. There's no Gilliman. There's nobody. They're just like, yeah, here's a Dark Angels Tactical Squad. That's the rare. What? Like that's just not going to happen.
Right.
So
don't get your hopes up, but this would be the opposite. Don't undersell. You don't know. They may do it.
I'm sure,
spite you.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a card, that's Dark Angels Tactical Squad, and I'll be like, really? Like, you couldn't even give it a cool name, creature type, Space Marine, really? It's still going to be jarring to me, but I'm looking forward to it. It'll give me something to look forward to, then I'm all for it. Because I am just about done with Versus 2 PCG. I don't know why I keep buying that game. It's not a fun game. I can't say it's not fun, it's just really boring. If you guys have ever played Versus 2 PCG, it's a living card game. It's the second edition of Versus, which is like a comic.
The old Versus system?
Yes.
Yeah, the DC versus Marvel one, right?
It was, DC Marvel, and then this one here, they revised it so it's not compatible, and it's just Marvel. But then they added a photographic universe. So you've got Marvel Comics, all the Marvel different teams, blah, blah, blah. It's all illustrated. Photographic universe has got the Marvel movies. They're not compatible with the illustrated sets, so you can't have decks that have both cards. But then they also have got licensed properties for Buffy, X-Files, James Bond, and I think there's still been talk about stuff like Big Trouble in Little China, Predator, Aliens. Predator and Aliens are in the illustrated, but they're not in the photographic.
Okay, so they basically got all the licenses that Legendary did.
Because it's printed by the same people, Upper Deck. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they could
that's
they
cool.
could do a Firefly, they could do, there's potential there. They haven't done a lot with it, and it is one of those games where every set comes out, and as an LCG, when I say set, I mean it's 60 cards. It's 60 card booster, and
right,
15
new
bucks.
cards.
Yeah, exactly. 4 copies of 15 cards. Every set, though, it's like every card has got a special rule. How do you keep track of all these special rules? Like, come on. Like, the game itself it leaves a lot to be desired, and yet somehow I cannot break away from it. I just keep going because I like Marvel Comics. I can't shake it. So I hope the game dies so I can stop buying them.
It was funny before I moved out here. I got exposed a little bit to the Universal Fighting System.
Oh, UFS, yeah.
Yeah, and now they're trying to call it Universes as like a pun. And I was excited because they got the IP for Yu Yu Hakusho. Like, oh man, I love that show. I assumed since I was moving out to where they make the game that it would have a big scene out here, and literally nobody knows what it is. Like, I've been in like 4 different card shops out here. I'm like, hey, does anybody play UFS out here? And they're like, what's that?
That's amazing.
Like, they have a spectacularly bad marketing team.
They do. I have a friend who works not on the marketing. He works for Jazzco, and he usually has done the cons for them. He's actually got a card based off of him. Like, they did a card art for him.
That's fun.
Yeah. UFS has been around for a very long time, and it has always suffered from that, like, visibility issue. I don't know what the deal is. I don't understand what the distribution problems are. The people who are into it are really into it, and it has got a lot of properties for it. It's got Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Mega Man, King of Fighters. It initially started as a fighting game core set, but they expanded it beyond that to some degree and incorporated other anime elements. But it's hard to find. It's not everywhere. It's not easily accessible, and yet they continue to make the game. They've, I think, revamped it. I think it's got 2 or 3 editions. But it's a fun game to play. So yeah, if you find some people to stick around and play with it, it's have a blast.
Yeah, because it and like I said, they went into Yu Yu Hakusho, and I was like, whoa, man, that calls back to like my childhood, and I was just excited to see like those characters on cards, right? Just kind of the initial joy of card games, right? Just getting to see these characters and be able to play them and do that, and it just can't find a play group.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, some cards, like that's the initial grab. Like for me, Star Wars was like, wow, I can play this. I can, not only do I like Star Wars, but I can play a game that really offers a unique experience. 40K Legions offers a unique experience. Warhammer Conquest, which was the LCG from Fantasy Flight Games. The art's great, but you get to play 40K in a different way that's not with the tabletop, and you still feel like you're experiencing the game, but can't experience it if you're just playing by yourself. So Legions is always like, that's one reason why, like, I play one friend with the Versus 2-piece CG, but Legions I get to play with everybody who's out there, and it's far superior when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think from all the stuff I had heard, the coolest thing about UFS was how they did tournaments. So their whole thing was that whatever their top cut was, there could only be
one of each
deck.
character.
one of each character. And
Mhm.
so like if you're playing the number one meta deck, you have to beat like the other 30 people that are playing that deck.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you have to. They only allow one, so you better be better than everybody else in the room.
You best
if
have
you
the
just wanna
best
make
one.
top.
That's right.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to like force meta diversity, but somebody kind of let the cat out of the bag because they're like, yeah, you just bring the actual like good commander in your sideboard, and you just go into them in game 2 and 3.
Uh,
And I was like, ah, man, that's too bad.
it's unfortunate, just kind of shifting it around. Shady.
Right. Violating the spirit of the law.
You gotta play the game within the game. All right, well, I think that's gonna kind of wrap it up here. We're kind of moving to plugs. Howley, you got anything you want to plug?
Just the community stuff, man. Just use that time for Bar Night Legions, the weekly tournaments, the World Cup. I hope signups are still open. I actually need to sign up still.
Signups are still open for World Cup, although we're moving into 10 days left. So if you haven't signed up for the World Cup, get on the Discord and do that. I should probably plug that on Reddit one more time. I don't know how often that's getting plugged out there, but World Cup signups is going through the end of this month. We got 10 more days.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that because, I like any opportunity to engage in like a tournament setting because it reminds me more of physical card games than just a ladder. Obviously, ladder's great, like you said, for being able to get a game with anybody at any time instead of just fighting a bot or goldfishing. But yeah, the community is really awesome at organizing and running these tournaments. And so for anybody new playing, hopefully they'll all check them out because they offer a wide variety of ways to build decks and people to play. It like kind of blew me away when I was playing Bar Night and like half the people there in the top 50. I was like, oh, no wonder I'm always getting pasted.
Keeping it diverse. Gotta mix it up. How about you, Axel?
Exactly. I don't think I got anyone to plug. Kaz will be on shortly, so I can no longer mock him. Nah, I still can.
You'll have to mock
But
him when
we've
he
hit
gets
peak
on.
mocking.
You've
Well.
peaked the mocking?
Yeah, we hit peak mocking. Especially because Doles has been a fan of Kaz for a while and watched a lot of his live streams. And Doles remembered that Kazrim's real name was said once during a live stream. So because he remembered that, he then said that while talking to him the other day, and it was just like, we've hit the peak of bullying Kazrim, so we gotta stop. Once you go, you've completely gone over the hump. There's only downhill from here. We gotta stop now.
Yeah, don't dox the guests.
No,
That's a pretty early rule.
Yeah.
we're not doxing the guests. Not our intention.
That's
Our
not
intentions
good.
are pure.
All right. Well, I don't have much to plug other than deck slots. Howley mentioned Barnet
Hashtag
Legions.
deck floats.
No, hashtag more deck slots. We should be... I don't know. We haven't heard anything. I sent out an email to Everguild earlier this week. I haven't heard back from them yet on terms of upcoming expansion. When we get a Q&A with the devs, odds are that will be the announcement for the upcoming expansion. So I expect it to be, if not after this event, the next. And probably after next event, to be honest, because we haven't heard anything yet. We just hit reinforcements. So I'm going to say early April, late April at the latest. And I would be surprised if the next expansion is at the end of April. So we will need deck slots for that. But other than that, that's it. That's all I got. It has been a busy week.
I've got the opposite. I actually want the game to go down to one deck slot.
Yeah,
I feel like that would be better.
I've
for
been
the health of
advocating
the
for
meta.
that.
Ooh, there'd be so much time that people would have to spend in their deck building. You know, they wouldn't have variants. They'd have to delete and deck, and you'd actually probably would play more bots if that was the case.
Nah, just everybody would just play Corswain. See, it's about Dark Angels eventually.
Corswain or Knights, they'd just be like, look, I have one Knight deck, and that's all I'm going to play. All right, well, Hallie, thank you for making it on. You're advocating for more deck slots? Yeah? That sounds like
the opposite. One deck slot. Could you imagine a tournament where you got to rebuild your deck in between rounds?
No, your tournaments would take forever. That's terrible. Dislike immensely.
Our last one took forever, and that was a pretty easy deck building restriction.
Yeah, I thought so too. But I don't think the deck building restriction had anything to do with the length of that particular tournament.
Part of it was my fault. I should not have played Magnus and Modrum. That was a Like when I built Do Nothing Magnus, I didn't expect to win a game with it.
It's a long game deck right there.
Like it was. I want to say that one of the games took like 22 minutes. It
Nice.
felt really bad.
Got to build it faster. Hopefully this next one, the next Bar Night Legions is coming up April 3rd. So if you are into that, you want to get into the casual, you can check it out on the Discord. Sign up links are for challenge are linked out there. So, all right, Hallie, thank you for joining us tonight. Axel, thank you for making it on again.
Yeah, I'll be here.
All right, and that's it for me. We'll talk to everybody next week.
Howdy ho, folks.
for
Have a
having
good
me.
one.
Yep, bye.
A magnificent ending.
This has been another episode of the Warp Chatter Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Yes.
Shh. It's over. Don't fight it.